even if you play 10 years in the NHL, right? At the end of the day, we're all playing men's league at some point. So if you don't have that academic piece to figure out what it is that you want to do, you're toast. So biggest question I get, and it's almost always from the moms, I don't want my son to take a year off. And my first response is he's not taking a year off. Right. He's going to enrich his life so much. He's going to learn time management. He's going to face a ton of adversity this year that maybe he hasn't faced yet. Right. And he's going to learn from those lessons, and he's going to be able to take them to college. Managers, owners, and recruiters want team sport athletes more than ever. And almost every one of our kids are not only getting jobs, they're getting six-figure jobs right out of college. We get a handful of kids every year that like, this isn't for me. And I learned it because of the environment that we put them through or put them in, and nobody talks about that. Nobody ever talks about it. When I say it to the parents, they're always like, they give me that, crooked, confused dog look. And they're like, well, you're talking about, kids that didn't make it. I'm like, yeah, but they're still going to be successful in something. They maybe didn't make it in hockey, but they're not failures.
I hope that opened the eyes to a lot of parents in terms of where they're going to send their kid is not based on where they committed a kid, but how their kid comes home a man.
Episode 5, we have Ryan McGrath here from the Valley Junior Warriors of the EHL. Ryan has a very long history on the coaching side, 20 plus years now, officially.
This will be year 27.
27 years. We thought he'd be a great resource to have on the podcast. He's kind of coached at every level. He's seen everything. Someone who's got some interesting perspective in Valley as a program in the EHL has done a great job of moving guys on into college, into, tier 1 juniors. So yeah, Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me in episode 5. That's huge. Usually I get a call around like episode 60 when all the quality people go out the window.
No, we like to treat the real ones well here, and we're excited to have you. So we were talking about this before we started recording, but I guess we'll hop off on this right away. Fire away. Let's hear it.
We get asked a lot, like with the new CHL rules that came down, or the new NCAA rules in November, where now NCAA bound student athletes can now go play in the CHL. So that's obviously whether Canadian, American, European, doesn't matter, right? So those NCAA bound kids are gonna take spots away from players that were there, right? Where that wasn't an option before, because they've been asking, and minus the recent like tier 2, tier 3 expansion that we're seeing, in some other leagues, right? The player pool isn't changing. Right, we're just changing the rules. So if now, let's call it 100 NCAA bound kids end up taking roster spots in the CHL this year, I'm assuming it's going to be more than that. Where the kids are going to get pushed out, where are they going to go? Are they going to go to the junior B and the tier 2 leagues? Are they going to try to come down to the States and go to the USHL? Like, where do those kids cycle out?
That's a very good question and a tricky one, because I think it depends on what part of the country they're in. If they're in Quebec, most of them are going to stay junior AAA in Quebec. The reason being is because the Quebec scouts won't go to other provinces to go recruit these kids. If they leave to go to BC, they kind of get blacklisted. It's some sort of hate against your own province type of thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you're trying to better your hockey career, it's a hate against your own province. And I say that for 80% of the league, because there are certain teams in the league that are doing the right thing and taking care of players, but they get a bad rap because they're under the same umbrella in that league. If you're in the O, I'm expecting them probably going to go to the Goj, because a lot of their cuts get sent there, depending on their age. And then in the Dub, they're probably going to go to BCHL. So I think on the American side, you probably see more coming over to the Null. But I think in terms of the other leagues, I don't quite see a huge difference.
Well, and we're talking about the 20 and over before, again, we started recording, but like the 20 and over situation, right? Three spots per team for a 20-year-old. You were just saying, camps that have 11 guys that are over 20, like, what is that going to do? 8 of those guys are going home. BCHL becomes a really interesting prospect, because if you kind of go across all of Hockey Canada, let's say even there's 5 per tryout right now on average, and that 20 and over, that means there's 2 guys from each team. That's 120 guys. I mean, those are guys that probably do trickle into the BCHL, in my opinion, immediately. And then USHL has the advantage, right? We know that USHL doesn't have that same stipulation. That's where they win. That more mature guy who just needs that year of high level hockey that maybe, just didn't flourish early on. But then you have the import rule, right?
Yeah.
So for a US kid, fine. And I think USHL import rule is it 6 this year?
I believe that's correct.
It's either 6 or 8. And I know the null is 8 now. Those will change probably.
Yeah. But I think the other factor we're not including here is when a kid gets cut from tier 1 to go down to tier 2 or pay to play, that's where it's like, okay, well, if I go from Canada to US, I'm already losing a ton of money on the conversion, and then the price of playing. Like, you go look at the local leagues, it's like $3,000 to play. So these families, they go crazy when it's like, yeah, it's $13,000 to play because you're billed and all this other fees. So that's where I think part of the reason that a lot of Canadians don't come over. There's a ton that do, but others that should and just decide to either stop playing or go play in a really, really bad league.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
So on that note, this is a good segue into, you've been in the EHL for, 6 years, 7 years now?
Yep.
Where do you've seen the league grow, you've seen it kind of shift in strategy a little bit, obviously the new declaration of declaring yourselves tier 2. Where do you see the league maybe moving? What are some maybe advantages for players who are still in question on, in a pay-to-play junior situation? Like, what's the best opportunity for me? What does the EHL offer maybe that other leagues don't?
The number one thing is the proximity to the NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3 colleges, right? And I say Division 1, that's not a normal trajectory for kids in our league, but we have had, throughout the 12 years, we have had a number of players that have come as younger players, done well, moved on to leagues like the USHL or the NTDP or, things of that nature. We have one alumni since I've been in Valley that's playing NCAA Division 1. He's at Stonehill, Ryan Davies. When he got recruited there out from our team, they were Division 2. That summer, they made the switch to Division 1. I never switched his designation on our website. I didn't want to be that guy. And then when Coach Berard came in to Stonehill, they kept Ryan and offered him a spot to be with their Division 1 team. So I did finally change the designation on our website. So, we will have a handful of Division 1 kids throughout the years, but it's the proximity to the NCAA Division 2 and Division 3 schools where, most of our teams, especially the New England-based teams or the New York, New Jersey-based teams, Pennsylvania, are within quick driving distance to multiple schools. We have multiple NCAA coaches that will come to our games. I have 2 coaches that will come to our practices. Our rink literally is in between where they live and where they work, and they'll stop by in the morning because we practice at 9:30, and they'll just watch our practices from time to time. Either pick up a new drill or their kid that they're recruiting, they want to see how hard he competes in practice. So, regardless, and we can get into tiers and classifications and all that and criteria, the New England-based leagues have always had that advantage of being able to showcase their players to multiple NCAA schools in a very easy manner. And especially now more than ever at the Division 3 and Division 2 level, recruiting budgets are getting slashed. Schools, if you've been paying attention to this, the demise of small private colleges in New England, where many of them have closed their doors or sold to a bigger university, right? There are less kids going to college in the United States. We're having less children, right? Our generation or whatnot, and budgets are getting slashed. So coaches can't fly all around to see all the other leagues. They can watch on different, streaming sites and Flow Hockey and whatnot. But when you want to watch a player in person and watch him away from the camera and watch how he interacts with his teammates and his coaches and the athletic trainers, you got to get there in person. And that's what we offer, better than anyone else.
That raises the question for me. Knowing the fact that you guys are so close to all these schools, especially the Division 1 schools, how come most teams in the league always aim for an older team? Why not have a healthy mix of younger guys that you can promote to the higher up levels and be a little bit of a feeder, and then have the older guys that you're helping get to college?
Right. And that's a great question. So in New England, obviously high school hockey is still a good option. The Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, the six New England states still have very competitive public and Catholic high school hockey. And then of course, New England prep school is very popular. And if you look at, 85% of the players that have played in the NHL out of New England, they played New England prep school. And they played split season midgets, then they played prep school. They maybe even reclassed or took a postgraduate year. So we've always been the result of getting older because kids want to play some form of high school hockey here, whether it's public, Catholic, or prep. Now the academy model has come in with some success. A few of the teams, that's been an option for some top players that, wouldn't normally. You still see, every year you get one or two New England kids. They'll go play at Shattuck, or they'll go play at Culver, they'll go play at Notre Dame or places like that. So that's why we've always gone, at least personally, we've always had an older team because, kids want to play high school hockey. We don't really want to steal them from that environment. I would rather the high school coach promote that kid to me because he knows I want that kid to stay. I want him to graduate. I want him to play multiple sports. I want him to be a captain. I want him to be the best player, right? Have that experience of crowds, having your name in the newspaper, being on the local news. And those are all things that happen around here that don't happen at our games, right? Like our games are at 11:30 in the morning. We get, 5 or 6 NCAA coaches, and we get, any parents that work remotely and some grandparents, right? For the most part, we do have some weekend games, second half of the year, but that experience of playing for your high school, playing for that pride, and they grew up in that town, is something we don't really want to rob them of. Of course, I would love to start coaching my kids at 16, and get 5 years of development out of them versus 1 or 2, right? It would make my job so much easier, but until high school hockey goes away or New England prep school hockey goes away, I think we're always going to be an older league here, in the East. And I have deep ties to the Eastern Junior Hockey League and the Atlantic Junior Hockey League. And when the Eastern Junior League when they separated and became the USPHL, I was working for the South Shore Kings at the time. And I was on all those calls where they distinctly talked about wanting to try to go younger. But other than, John Marino, Jack Eichel, Jack didn't play in the USPHL. He played for the Junior Bruins Empire team. Connor Garland also played for the Junior Bruins Empire team, but they were trying to keep kids like that from going to prep school and going to high school, and they wanted them younger. And it hasn't really worked because, again, high school hockey is still a viable option here in New England.
Yeah, that reminds me of, so I played in Syracuse for a time, and so EJ, Don Kernan, the hockey royalty, now the head of the Fed, I think. Chet Morin was 15 on our team. Mm-hmm. He was like that. So, for a kid to be really young, and I think the rule still persists, we see this kind of across juniors, right? If you're going to play, like this year, it would be like an 09 playing juniors is going to be very rare in most leagues. You have to be exceptional. You have to have great vision. You have to, you're probably not physically developed. And so you have to be able to take, the physical piece of it. You have to be a playmaker. There has to be something, right? Like an intangible that's like, this kid can play. Like he's safe. Like we don't worry about maybe exposing him too early to a rougher, maybe more structured game. He can play within these kind of confines of what juniors has, but it's really rare. Like, and I just remember, I think Chet ended up at Harvard and he played for the Blackhawks for a bit. Like that kid was exceptional.
Right. Well, and you take that Western New York market, which is obviously different than New England, and that Syracuse organization has had an unbelievable rich history of getting young players back to the Timmy Conleys and the Matt Murleys, Alex Tucks, and they were a feeder. Yeah, Robbie Schremp. I mean, they had I felt like it was like 7 years in a row. They had a kid leaving their midget program to go to the NTDP, right? Or their junior program. They were younger, and they did an unbelievable job. But you listen to some of the stories that Matt Murley and Timmy Conley talks about, like they were 15 years old playing against, 21-year-olds in the OJHL and fights, and, but they made it out. But, that stuff
now. To the rule. Yeah, they're so far on that one end of the bell curve. Like it's, right. The one for every like Tim Connolly or Merles, you're gonna have a kid who flames out and is like, I don't know what to do. and because
Right.
they're not going to be able to keep up with it. Something happens, they get injured, and it can derail it as fast as it can accelerate it.
Right. And that, again, high school hockey isn't as popular there. You'll see, if you look at New England prep school rosters every year, there's a high concentration of kids from Western New York, even as close as, Albany and Rochester, all the way out to Buffalo, Syracuse, et cetera, that will come east and play New England prep school. They'll go to the Connecticut schools or the Western Mass schools because they're a little bit closer to home. So that's always been a rich tradition where they don't really have big, public or Catholic high school hockey. So they can go younger where we don't really have that opportunity.
So then my question to you here is Rashawn brought up the 09s. That kid that's on the bubble could play juniors this year and could go back and play either prep or 18s. What do you think should be the deciding factor for them? What should be the tipping point of, okay, no, I should go back to juniors, or I should go back to school, or I should go to juniors? Well,
if he's going to go to juniors, what are his academic options, right? That always has to be number one, right? And I'm a guy who, in one of the reasons I got into this industry is I don't have a great academic past. I was really immature when I was 18 to 20 years old. I made a ton of mistakes academically, and it cost me. And it's always been one of my motivations to help my players not make the same mistakes that I made, or if they did, let's find ways to fix it, right? But that 09 that has the opportunity to maybe step up and go somewhere, great. Well, what's the academic option, right? Where is he going to go to school? Is it online? Is it brick and mortar school, right? And then if there's an academic situation that fits him, and that can, help him achieve his academic goals, then, and he has the blessing of the coach to want to play on that junior team, he should absolutely do it if that's the direction that the family wants to go into. But I would hate to see a kid sacrifice an academic situation or go to a lesser academic situation just to try to boost the hockey profile. Because at the end of the day, even if you play 10 years in the NHL, right, at the end of the day, we're all playing men's league at some point. So if you don't have that academic piece to figure out what it is that you want to do, you're toast. So, we see it. Like, if you look at our NCAA commitments the last couple of years, they've gone down. And it's a result of, we've actually had some incredibly smart kids that have amazing grades. Well, when you have amazing grades and you want to play Division II or Division III, there's like 15 schools that you want to go to. It's the 10 NESCACs, it's Babson, it's Skidmore, it's Lake Forest, it's, Lawrence University. There's like 15 elite academic schools in Division III, and they're only taking 7 kids a year. Right. So we get a bunch of kids. We've had a bunch of kids that want to go to those schools. They didn't get recruited by them, but they got recruited by other NCAA Division II or Division III schools that didn't have what they wanted academically. So we've got guys, we've got guys at Columbia. We've got guys at NYU. We've got guys at Oklahoma. We've got guys at Loyola Marymount. They went and made great life decisions, and they're playing club hockey, but I can't list them on my website, as a success story, even though I think it's probably even more of a success story, because they put their academic over their hockey, because they know in 4 years they're going to be paying loans and they want to buy a house.
I feel like that'd be a great addition to a team's website, like the hockey success and the actual like life success ones.
Life success.
Well, and staying in the hockey realm of it, it's interesting because you look at like ACHA Div 1, we all know now about UNLV's run and what Anthony's doing there. What they're trying to build, I don't think it's a secret. They have an intent to become a Division I program at some point. But most teams, even 5-10 years ago, some teams would say well, we're not going to maybe share that a kid plays at an ACHA Div 1. But when you look at it, some of those programs are fantastic, and these guys are coming out, and these programs still move guys on to pro.
Mm-hmm.
There's a handful of them that if you're playing there, you're playing in a top program, you're going to the national championship in that league every year. Some of those kids could easily play Division I somewhere. I know, again, I'm using UNLV as an example, but I think they recruited 2 WHL players. They got a kid from CC or something. They're getting guys who have pedigree. They're an institution. They have a flight school. I had a player that I was working with, and we went through a whole list of schools, and he was a D3 player, had played a little bit in U Sport. How many schools offer an aviation program? Not many. So we had to look at creative options, and that UNLV is one. Like, that's a great option. North Dakota has that. They have club. Like, but you start to look at, well, what are, kind of going into what you were saying, like, what's the thing you want to do that's beyond hockey? Because I mean, that's like the second title of our podcast. We all end up in men's league. Maybe we should put that as like a subtitle or something. But like, what are you going to do after hockey that fulfills you? And like a big part of what we do, I feel like if you're doing your job as an advisor, it's what motivates you beyond the rink. Because that's the thing that keeps you sane when you're playing. But also it's the thing that can help drive you and put you in a good situation instead of, and I'm sure, Ryan, you've seen this, guys who maybe take an offer or decide on a school, but they don't really know what they want to do. And they're saying, well, I still want to keep playing hockey, but I don't know what I'm going to do as a student athlete there. And that's some guys can make it doing that, but it's a really tough place to operate from, because if hockey gets hard, school's going to be hard too. And then you're just not going to feel like you belong anywhere.
And that raises the question for me, with all the coaches we've spoken to, why is Ryan the first one that's brought up the fact of, I have other success stories, they're just not hockey success, right? The kid went to NYU, he went to Columbia. No other coach I've spoken to at the junior level has brought that up of like, look, we have a ton of guys that sign every year, but they're going to proper schools. They're like, who's going to Harvard? Who's going to Princeton? Who's getting those degrees that they're going to come out with a great life?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had those conversations before. This is the first for me.
Well, I'm getting soft in my old age for sure. But, it goes to a broader, everyone's talking about the state of our youth, right? Mental health and the pressures of sports, academics, social media comparisons. We're getting kids at 17 or 18 that are fried, right? They're burnt out from life, right? They're burnt out from everything. And do I think we can do a better job, as parents, as teachers, as coaches, as police officers, whatever, to prevent that? Yes, of course. But, so almost my goal is become less to drive hockey, more like let's get you to be a well-rounded young man so you can go have a great college experience, or maybe you're going to a trade school, maybe you're going military. We had a player this past year that just took the police exam, and he's going right onto the Cambridge Mass, police department, where they're going to pay for him to go to college, right? Versus his parents having to pay for him. Another great life decision. So we've become more like, I joke all the time that I'm becoming less of a hockey coach and more of a life coach. And I can look every one of our players in the eye and say, when I was your age, you couldn't even imagine the mistake that I made. And I'll give them a little bit of it. And they're like, wow, coach, my parents might kill me for that, and I let them know we can bounce back. It's not the mistake. It's how you handle it. It's how you are the next day. Our goal really is to get our kids to a well-rounded situation where, they can network, they can have a conversation. They can, ask a girl out on a date the proper way, right? They can be a gentleman. They hold doors. They take their hats off. They're good to our bus drivers. They're good to the restaurant workers and the hotel workers and the Zamboni drivers and all the people that are necessary to make our thing go. And then, hopefully they take that and they take it with them to college. And that's the biggest question I get. And it's almost always from the moms. I don't want my son to take a year off. And my first response is, your son is he's not taking a year off, right? He's going to enrich his life so much. He's going to learn time management. He's going to face a ton of adversity this year that maybe he hasn't faced yet, right? And he's going to learn from those lessons, and he's going to be able to take them to college, right? And if you look at the freshman dropout rate nationwide, not athletes, but just students, for men, it's alarming. How many men drop out their freshman year of college, young men. And then if you take that young man and he does a year or two of, we call it a gap year, right? And they get involved in some community college classes. They maybe work a part-time job, and then they have an extracurricular activity, i.e. junior hockey, or maybe they're volunteering, or they're doing city year or Build for America, or, even outside of hockey players. And then they go to college. Their success rate increases exponentially, right? And I can speak from it as a former college coach. I did 4 years at UMass Boston, and I did 5 years at Wentworth Institute of Technology. At Wentworth, I was lucky enough to be full time, so I had to go and sit in all these awful meetings, and with all the other sport coaches and the ADs and everyone. And like every week, like it would be like a girl on the soccer team, got rushed to the hospital, and a guy on the lacrosse team got arrested. And these are all both good schools with great kids. And they would look at us and say, "Why are your guys not getting in trouble?" I would say, "Well, they're coming in at 21. So they've kind of gotten that immaturity out of them. They're not having any less fun than your student athletes are. They just understand when to pick and choose their spots. And they're just a little bit more mature, and they've had a little bit more life experience versus that 17-year-old kid that's been under mom and dad's thumb and shows up to college and has no clue what to do. And that college cost $80,000. So mom and dad are just putting ridiculous amounts of pressure that you better do good, right? So, you look at what junior hockey offers kids, and we always ask them, "What do you want to study?" And then after their first year with us, that might change. I thought I wanted to be a police officer when I was that age. Thank God I didn't go in that. I couldn't get above a 91 on the exam, right? Because that's a hard job right now. That's a job that isn't a lot of fun. When I was a kid, it was. Hockey coach is a lot of fun. So their maturity and their trajectory of life is going to change so much from 17 to 20, and then they go to college and they're ready. They're prepared, and they can handle almost anything that's going to be thrown at them, and it works. So they don't take a year off. They're just doing something different for a year or two, or even 3. Sometimes we do get the 17-year-old that graduates high school early, right? And they have 3 years of eligibility.
No, I think we talk a lot with families about this. Like, that's one of the biggest things. When I was done with juniors, it didn't end how I wanted it to. It wasn't really on my terms per se. But when I went to college and I knew I wanted to go to college, like, that was okay, I'm ready to be a student. And so the things you're talking about, right? We try to emphasize this with families all the time, whether or not you end up parlaying this into an NCAA 3, 2, 1, or even ACHA or not AAU anymore, whatever, you walk in with a certain level of maturity. I remember like the first day I got into the dorms and I'm sitting there with my RA, and I'm the same age as my RA. And I'm like, "Look, I promise I'm not going to be trouble for you. Yes, I'm going to go out and have a couple pops. I will. I have buddies here, and but I'm here to do my business. I'm here to get my degree." And it's been 17 years now since I went to college, or somewhere in that range. And it's amazing to think back of how many people that I entered in with actually finished. And you see it whittle down, and you see people who aren't serious or don't really. I tell this to guys a lot. College is fun. It's not that hard either. Like, if you show up to class, you can get B's. And if you want to put in the extra work, you get C's get degrees, or everybody's got their whole idiom for that. But it's true. Like, showing up, attending class, enjoying that time, like learning something, taking courses that you like. It flies by pretty quickly, and then you find yourself in the real world, which at least, because this is something I hear guys talk about a lot too, and I'm interested to maybe what those conversations were like for you as a coach with guys doing this. But so a guy enters at 20, 21, he graduates at 25, 26. I hear a lot of families will also say will they be behind in the job market at that point? Like, are they going to be behind? And more times than not, no, everybody's got to start somewhere, but you're going to start at the bottom 9 times out of 10, no matter where you go.
Managers, owners, and recruiters want team sport athletes more than ever. All 9 years that I coached, we'd have our own alumni or friends of ours, friends of the coaching staff, but we'd be getting calls every spring. What are your seniors' majors? What are their GPAs? What do they want to do? Right? At Wentworth Institute of Technology, it's a little bit different because that's a tech school. We were, huge in engineering, construction management, and they do 2 different co-ops during their 4 years that they get get paid. This is not an internship. They're not pushing paper clips. They're on the job doing real things. And almost every one of our kids are not only getting jobs, they're getting 6-figure jobs right out of college, halfway up the company, like leading, they're a job manager for, a commercial construction company, or, a head researcher for an engineering company. Like, it's amazing the money that some of our guys have made. And at UMass Boston was the same way. It was a little bit different. UMass Boston was seen as more of a grinder school, where it wasn't any easy school to go to back in the day. It's different now. They have dorms and it's a lot different, but it used to have a reputation. If you graduated from UMass Boston, you could grind. You were street smart. You were tough. And we would get these guys every year that would call Peter Belisle, the head coach, and be like, I want all your seniors' contact info. I'll be in town next week. I want to interview. This is what I'm looking for. I need an accountant. I need a researcher. I need this. And your guys can grind. And that's what I need.
So it's funny you mentioned that, especially going back to the Wentworth. How did they do the co-op while playing?
So we couldn't practice till 5 p.m., which presented a challenge because ice time in the city of Boston is scarce. But when Jay Pecor and myself both came at the same time, we were very lucky to get the community rink in Everett, which is not close to campus, but it worked out for us. But so your freshman and sophomore year are normal. You take 5 classes per semester. And then your junior year, first semester, you take your 5 classes. Second semester, you do your co-op. So the best part about the kids in co-op, they're coming right from work, right? But after practice was over, they had no homework. They didn't have to study. They had no exams. All they had to do was prep their meals, get their sleep, and make sure, their clothes were ready for the next day. So, and then that summer, they would do the classes or take the classes that they normally would have taken during the second semester. And then first semester of their senior year, they do another co-op. And then second semester senior year, they go back to 5 classes. And then that summer, they take the classes that they would have taken that first semester senior year. And we graduate in August. So it was unbelievable. So you did have to go to school for 2 out of your 4 summers, but the job placement was almost, we used to joke around, only West Point and Air Force had better job placement than we did, right? Because you were going to be a
enlisted right away. Yeah, welcome to the officer pool, which
right.
Again,
so
academically tough institutions, and yeah, I mean for someone who wants to lean into, like, I am more academically inclined. More times than not, a lot of these schools you're going to find yourself doing those, or if you're taking a summer internship, like, it's not uncommon for guys to take a summer internship, be a D2, D3 athlete, right?
Yeah.
And it's time management. It goes back to, like, the core principles of what, I think you're alluding to, like, what you like teaching these guys is how do I show up? How am I prioritizing things in my life and what's important to me? You miss out on some of that if obviously juniors is going to force you to do that in some ways, but yeah, I think for the families where that's in question, I think this is a really good area to focus. Like, for families in question, like, do I send my kid to juniors? And I'm sure you guys get this a lot, well, with the EHL, well, my kid's not playing USHL. My kid's not playing North American League. Is it worth it for us? I'd say it still is, because A, they're getting that experience. B, you never know what can happen. Who sees your kid? And we see this all the time in hockey. We see this as advisors, right? There's a kid that could be in a backyard somewhere that for whatever reason, the group of coaches in that area, the associations, he doesn't or she doesn't do it for them. You can go somewhere else, and I say this because, we send you guys not only from the East Coast but from the West Coast, right? And this is something I often talk to families about: is you've been on the West Coast so long, maybe it's time for a change of scenery. And you go to a place, you go to Valley, you go to a team, Providence, teams in your league, and you're going to get different eyeballs. They're going to see different things that they want to work with, that they want to coach. And for whatever reason you weren't in favor here, that could change immediately. But it's really interesting, like, I guess, how often do you have those conversations with families where it is, maybe it's not the sell of it, but yeah, it isn't. We know that we're not the USHL. We know we're not that, but we provide a really good pathway here for a young man, or to go play at a high level still, a percentage that's still, what is it, NCAA? If you play NCAA, you're less than 1%. It's 1.5% of all hockey players in any given. It's absurd. It's like less. It's less than that, right? It's like 0.5.
Right. So we get that question asked all the time. Is it worth it? Now, just quick stats, right? In the 6 years that I've been in charge of Valley, we've had 61 NCAA advancements. We've had 4 kids go to the North American League, 1 kid go to the CC, 1 kid go to the OJ, right? And we've had a number of kids go to non-hockey playing schools or careers and whatnot. And I look at parents all the time and I say, this is what nobody talks about. You go on anyone's social media, anyone's website, they're going to say we have a 100% track record. All of our players go to college. The stuff that we see in the self-promoting this is crazy. What about the kids that don't make it, right? What about the kids that show up to our team? And we put them in what we believe to be a college environment. Like I said, I coached it for 9 years at 2 different schools under 2 great head coaches, Jay Pecor and Peter Belisle. So I try to give all that to these players. And every year we'll get 1 or 2 guys, either between our EHL team and our premier team, say, you know what, coach, I don't think I want to play college hockey. Like, I want to go on spring break. I want to do a semester abroad. I want to play the guitar. I want to chase girls. I want to I want to study something that, like, at Wentworth, you couldn't be an architecture major and play sports because in addition to their classes, they had to be in the drawing lab 20 hours a week. And that was how much time we would spend on practice and lifts and games. So like they might pick a major where it's almost impossible to play, or they're just playing some form of intramural, or floor hockey or whatnot. So we get those kids every year that they weed themselves out. And like, this isn't what we thought. We just thought, we saw BC and BU and Maine and UNH on TV. We went to the Beanpot growing up and we just thought this is what it was all about. And then we realized what college hockey is actually about: the practices, the training, all the meetings you have to go to, all the different rules that you have applied to you that the regular student body, or as they call NARPs, non-athletic regular people, don't really have to adhere to, right? And we're like, great. What do you want to do then? What do you want to study? Where do you want to go to school? What's the plan? And if hockey's no longer be a part of your life, and this was the last year, let's make it awesome. Let's try to win a championship. Let's try to get you a letter. Let's make your last hockey experience be unbelievable. So that's, and so you're going to be playing men's league at some point. So we get that all the time. We get a handful of kids every year that, like, this isn't for me. And I learned it because of the environment that we put them through or put them in. And instead of them going to college and trying to attempt to get there, they figured it out. This isn't what I want. Now I can just focus on academics. I can focus on, whatever it is that they want to focus on. So, and nobody talks about that. Nobody ever talks about it. When I say it to the parents, they're always like, they give me that, crooked, confused dog look. And they're like, well, you're talking about, kids that didn't make it. I'm like, yeah, but they're still going to be successful in something. They maybe didn't make it in hockey, but they're not failures, right? Like, they're still going to go on and lead great lives and do some cool things and hopefully get a good education or have a good career in whatever they want to do. And that's okay. We helped them get there too. We're just as proud of those guys as we are the 61 guys that committed to NCAA schools.
Ryan, I'm going to disagree with you right there. My men's league team on Thursdays is, let's just say my resume speaks for itself, and my accomplishments dictate whether or not I get to start the game or I have to ride the bench for the first 5 minutes as we take the lead. I think one of the questions I had for you was, like, in 20 plus years of coaching now, in at different levels, like, what hasn't changed? What's gotten easier to relate to? You've kind of you alluded to this a little bit with maybe, like, hockey isn't as much of an emphasis sometimes now with these guys, but maybe what's gotten easier, like, what's changed about players, what hasn't, and what's easier now as a coach, what's more difficult now. I think, yeah, you kind of teed it up that way, but I'd be interested to know, just from your perspective, how much that's changed.
Skills that are necessary to make it to the NCAA level have not changed, right? You still have to be an elite skater. You still have to think the game. You still have to be big and strong. I don't care if you're 5'5" or you're 6'8", you have to be big and strong and explosive, right? The technology has changed. The training has changed, the off ice and the, the things of that nature. I think a negative is obviously we have too many kids that are specializing too early and they don't possess those athletic skills. Like, I joke around, like, our guys play soccer before every game, but this year, one of our guys brought a football, and he was a heck of an athlete, and they'd be throwing spiral passes, and then you see the one kid that can't throw a spiral pass and can't catch a football to save his life. And you're like, did you ever play another sport? No, not after I was 7, right? And you look at all the best Europeans that are coming over, they're unbelievable tennis players and they're unbelievable soccer players, right? Why aren't we pushing those sports on our players, right? So the training has changed, the technology has changed, but the core skills that you need and the core determination that you need has not changed, right? In college hockey, but I cannot wait for October 1st. I cannot wait to see Gavin McKenna play at Penn State and see all these guys play. Like I haven't been this excited for an NCAA Division I men's season in maybe ever, and since I was a little kid, right? It's going to be unbelievable. And everyone's complaining, oh, we're taking spots away from Americans. I don't think so. We're just going to adapt, and things are going to go different. And if we weren't meant to get a Division I spot, we weren't meant for it. But in the biggest thing that has changed is the parents, right? The parents have, and I get it. They're putting their life finances into raising a hockey player right now. Like, it is not cheap, and they're putting a ton of money into it, and they expect some sort of return on their investment. And if you raise a kid that way in sports, you're 99% going to be disappointed, right? 99% of those kids are going to be deemed failures that they didn't meet their parents, goals as a 7-year-old. Right, because they're putting so much money. And it's the same, my niece's dance, and the costs are astronomical. I have friends, children who play lacrosse. Club lacrosse is crazy, right? It's not just a hockey problem.
Soccer, volleyball, like anything that's club. I mean, it goes away from specialization or towards specialization, no matter what, usually around 12 and up. And you're mortgaging you're putting out a second mortgage in some cases for some people, which is, again, I get you'll do anything for your kid, but at what cost? And there is money in youth sports. Like, we'd be lying if there wasn't right now.
Right. Oh, it's a $40 billion business annually. The USA Today article that came out about the Dallas Stars talked about that. But just to finish my point, like, the parents, they're placing just unattainable expectations on their children. And they're so angry. Like, there's so much anger going amongst the parents, and it's like, just enjoy it. Enjoy you get to go watch your kid do something he loves, and hopefully he again goes back to my original point, well-rounded, right? Be proud. Like, there's certain ranks, and we've seen it all over the country. Your son or daughter's athletic ability has no bearing on your ability as a parent, right? Like, there are parents that are doing everything right. Their kids play multiple sports, and they just don't have an athletic bone in their body. My wife was a full scholarship swimmer at University of New Hampshire. She can run and swim for days. She has 0 fast twitch muscles. If I threw a wiffle ball at her, she would fall, right? And she earned a full scholarship to play, to be a swimmer. But we play pickleball in the summertime, and it is hysterical, like, watching her try to run and swing a racket at the same time. And I'm like, I can't believe you were a full scholarship athlete, right? But there's just certain things that certain kids can do, and you can manufacture development. You can give kids extra resources. You can hire a strength coach, a nutritionist. But at the end of the day, we all have a ceiling. Right. And it's really, really hard. There's the Zdeno Chars of the world, and the guys that just blow it out, that just, come from nowhere and completely, exceed expectations, are few and far between. Most of us end up where we were meant to end up, and if you can accept that, or you can, make excuses, right? Get bitter or get better, right? So I just think the parents have really changed things from a young perspective. Like, we don't really deal with parents at all because our players are 18. If I have a parent calling me, I'm like, you're your son could go to war for this country. He can vote. He can, he could run for Congress. Like, why are you calling me about playing time? And not that that happens a lot, because we believe in small rosters, so our guys typically play a ton. But if there's a concern or something of that nature, or we want to have an academic talk, we always take that call. But our players, we encourage our players, you come to us, and then when you get home, if mom and dad ask you that question, you can then choose to share with them our conversation or not. It's your choice.
Yeah. I talked to coach about it. Again, it goes back to that ownership, preparing them for the rest of their lives. Mommy and daddy are not going to be there when you miss a deadline as a professional, or you have a disagreement with a superior or a customer or whatever it is, right? Like, at some point we have to learn to self-manage. And like, that's, if anything, juniors is a great place to do that if they haven't been prepared for that already, which, I think a lot of coaches do a good job of trying to instill those skills early. But yeah, there's always that kid you get who, like, you seem a little like confused by what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to get yourself to the rink, to make sure you're fed, and then come ready and prepared because I gave you homework, you did film, and we're going to talk about these systems today, or something to that. And you always get that one. It's like, huh? Like, this was on the email. This was in the group chat. I've given you 3 different ways to do this. I'm trying to meet you where you are, which is, that's one that's always been interesting to me, is like, maybe you see this more. Have you changed? Maybe this is my last question. Have you changed your coaching style at all over the 20 plus years, 25, 27 years, to be more where you might have been more auditory, more visual, kinesthetic? Like, how, or have you always been that way as a coach? Like, what changed in your coaching style as like players and people have evolved?
Geez, that's a great one. I don't shut up. I could keep you guys on this thing for 3 hours, right? Everyone that's a YouTube follower of AHA would quit. So I do talk quite a bit. I definitely talk way less to the referees, right? Just because I've finally grown up a little bit at 47 or 46 years old, that they're not going to change their opinion. They're not going to change the call. But I think I try as best I can when a kid comes off the ice and he made a bonehead play, or he did something that led to a turnover or whatnot, instead of just being like, you should have done this. I love when I remind myself, or remember, like, hey, what were you thinking there? Oh, I was thinking this, coach. Well, when that's where you can find the mistake, it's usually in the thought process,
Yeah, what did you see? Walk me through.
Yeah, what were you?
Yeah.
You were on a 1-on-3 and you attempted a toe drag in the offensive blue line. Right? Instead of just skipping it or peeling back and finding a trailer, because your 2 line mates just changed up. So you had no support, right? So let's just, and it's under 5 minutes left to go and we're up a goal. Like, let's manage the game a little bit better.
That's the beer league special, toe drag on a 1-on-3.
Exactly. And the video has been awesome for that. And especially like our team, we, everyone in our league has Flow Hockey, right? So every game is broadcast on Flow. And if the kid has a Flow subscription, he can clip stuff and send it to college coaches and kind of use it as a teaching tool. But we go above and beyond, and we provide Instat Huddle for our players. And that is an incredible tool, within 24 hours of every game. And there's a number of different services that do it. So it's not just Instat Huddle. Within 24 hours of every game, they get all their shifts broken down. Right, they get all their analytical information, and I tell players not to live and die by that, because the camera does miss stuff, and that's all a lot of AI generated, analytics. So there's got to be a, some percentage of error. But and the best part is, if a kid's not having success or he's not playing great, instead of just sitting in my office and be like, what do I need to do? We tell our kids, and we encourage them, hey, bring me 2 or 3 clips from your last game. Maybe you were a winger and you were having trouble getting the puck out, or maybe every time you're a defenseman, you turned right, you got toasted, right? Let's bring a couple clips, let's throw it up on the TV, and let's talk through those clips, right? And the biggest thing too, you can't get good at everything right away, right? Like, get hypersensitive on 1 or 2 things per month. All right, if we have an 8-month season, Labor Day to the end of April, right? If we make it all the way to the championship, that's an 8-month season. You can really develop in an 8-month season. But if you go into every day being like, I'm going to be better at everything, you're going to accomplish nothing. So just get hypersensitive on one or two things each month and focus on that, and not just keep it to yourself. Let us know, let your teammates know. This is what I'm really working on here. So, you know, that's been a huge addition to our players, because they love watching themselves, and they will go, and they're clip generated, right? Like, they don't watch full games like we did, right? They're highlights. They want to see, you know, 15 or 20 seconds, and that's what really, you know, attracts them. And in that sense, you asked if I changed, like, we used to do crazy long video sessions when I was at UMass Boston, even Wentworth, like crazy long video sessions. Now we try to keep our video 5 minutes or under, right before we step on the ice for practice, whatever we're trying to accomplish. We're lucky enough to have a beautiful locker room where we've got the TVs and the dry erase right in the room. I can show something in between periods, but I'm not going to be up there for 20 minutes, because they're going to tune me out after 5 to 7 minutes, and it's going to be a waste of time. So we try to keep our videos short, which is a big thing that's been a change over the years. And we utilize the phone. Like, we send them clips through the phone. We use a few different apps through the phone. Like I said, they're going to be on their phone all the time. Like, I can't just be a boomer and be like, put your phone away. You know, they're on it. It's glued to their hands. So let's utilize it. So let's send them educational things. Let's send them our schedules. Let's send them, you know, everything that we do, we send it to them through the phone. Obviously, it's printed in the locker room and, you know, on the poster board and whatnot, but we send it to them on their phone, because that's their number one resource. So as much as I want to rip it out of their hands sometimes, I can't accomplish that.
Like you said, we could probably go for 2 or 3 hours. I would probably be killing your time. Your wife would probably be strangling you at some point in the back of the kitchen there. But Ryan, thank you so much for spending time with us. It's great. We're going to do more of this just for listeners and viewers. Our goal is to get a wide array of people that work in hockey professionally, some GMs, some scouts, people that can give you insight on kind of all pieces of this. And so as our goal of educating families and you know, our clients and future clients, the more we do that, everybody gets better and everybody's expectations get better. This was a great way to do that. And again, thank you for joining us. Yeah, Steph?
I also want to say thank you for making a point to say that the success of a program, the success of a coach is not based upon the college commitments as a hockey player, but about what kind of a man you produce out of your program. And I hope that opened the eyes to a lot of parents in terms of where they're going to send their kid is not based on where they committed a kid, but how their kid comes home a man. That's what should be more important when they're sending their kids away.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your guys, all the work that you do. I mean, Steph, I feel like a celebrity just being on with you, because I think I watch more videos of you than anything else. You know, you're doing a great job getting the content, and obviously I've been going to the AHA showcases since I think the first one up at Letty Park in Burlington. So now I love it that you're even closer to my area. So I always put them on the calendar as soon as Braden comes out with the dates, and I'll continue to get there, and would love the relationship that we have with you guys. So keep up the good work, you know, educating people and just really doing right by your clients, and that's important.
Thank you very much, Ryan. We appreciate that.
You got it. Have a great day, guys.